Disclaimer! Woo! So, before I start talking about the video, I'm just going to say I'm going to be mentioning a couple of brand names to use as good examples in here. But none of this is sponsored, so that's just me off of myself giving compliments to these things, so no sponsorships. Yeah. There are a lot of times I'll be sitting on my bed with a sketchbook in my hand, having the urge to draw something. I really want to draw, and for some reason my brain isn't supplying me with the ideas to draw, and I end up creating literal crap, and just the worst drawings, just things that I really do not like, and it's terrible. It's terrible. This is one form of artist's block that I know I'm not the only one to experience, and I believe that one thing that can fuel this is a lack of inspiration, where you really want to create something, whether it's like a story, or a drawing, or a painting, or a sculpture, or whatever you create, and you just don't know what to do. You want to do something, but you don't know what to do. And not having inspiration can be one of the most annoying things as an artist. Just, whew! I know there are a lot of annoying things, but when you're just sitting there with a pencil in hand and nothing you draw seems to come out right, oh boy, it's annoying. And it gets you really frustrated, too. So, I've created a list of a couple of ways I get inspiration. Now, I know everybody's different. Everybody gets inspiration from different things, and that's all right. But if you don't know where to start, here are a couple simple things that I find I get a lot of inspiration from. The first one is music. Now, this one is probably one of the most obvious ones. Music can just fill you with emotion and thought, and I know I'm not the only one who listens to music and likes to think out stories in my mind as the music plays. And, and every time I listen to a song, I think of a different circumstance. And that's one of the big things, is listening to music. I don't know what it is about music that your brain can just come up with ideas. I like to listen to a lot of electronic music, alternative music, musical music, like musicals. But, that's one of the ways I find getting most of my inspiration, is finding a good song that I like to listen to with substance. One band I know I definitely get a lot of inspiration from is Panic at the Disco, and I don't know what it is about their music, but I am filled with ideas listening to all of their songs, and especially since Pray for the Wicked came out, that gave me, all sorts of inspiration. Now, this next thing could also be listed as something to distract yourself from having a lack of inspiration, but this one I find is very helpful, is looking through old art. Just go back, pick up one of your old sketchbooks or portfolios or whatever you have, and get lost in all your cringe from 2 or 3 years ago. It's interesting to go back and remember the feeling of what you've created, because it's not lost, and there may be old things that you're gonna feel nostalgic about, and maybe you want to draw again. Or maybe you just get caught up looking through your old stuff for 3 hours and you don't even remember that you lost inspiration in the first place. Who knows? I know, for me, I'll often go back and look for something to redraw, because I don't do that a lot, but I'll go back to see if there's something that I might want to draw again, and then 2 hours later I'll find myself with like 10 different sketchbooks covering the space around me, and I remember that I was going to draw at one point. Since I personally draw mostly my own original characters, whenever I go back, I find myself becoming nostalgic for a lot of old stories and OCs that I'd created, and I'll end up redrawing those or redesigning them and bringing them back. And it's really, aside from giving yourself inspiration, it's really fun, you know? Even looking back and saying, that is a really long arm, or that anatomy is terrible, or what was I even thinking? It's just cool, you know? See your improvement. Pat yourself on the back. Give yourself some freedom. Here's another seemingly obvious one that I find very helpful, is going through the works of other content creators that you admire. And I'll look through my favorite artists on Instagram, or I'll find their stuff on YouTube, and I'll use maybe some of their drawings as anatomy references for practice, or maybe I want to draw one of their characters. Who knows? However, I do know it is hard to look up at people you admire, and the first thing you think is, wow, they're so much better than me, I'm never gonna be that good, and oh, my art sucks. Well, newsflash, it doesn't suck. Okay? You will get there. You have your own style, and you are going at your own pace, and you will get there. Don't feel like you have to be the best artist in the world, because you can't really. There's always going to be someone better than you. I don't know if anyone else saw this, but I saw a thing about this, 14-year-old girl who's creating millions of dollars off of her realistic paintings. And that made me think, wow, what am I doing with my life? But don't look at it that way. Look at them as an inspiration, as a role model, as something that you can set goals for, or you get ideas off of. My point that I'm making. Just remember that they were standing where you were once. And this is getting extremely off topic. Number 4. Mindless doodling. Sometimes this actually happens just naturally as a result of not having inspiration, for me at least. But basically just putting your pencil to the paper and just going with it. If you like to draw eyes, doodle eyes all over the page. If you like to draw faces or feet or legs or just the beans, if you like to draw beans, just draw beans. Draw whatever is comfortable for you and don't think about it. Just doodle. Or you can just make little lines. Just mindless doodling. And I realize that this doesn't really give as much inspiration as it does it gives an outlet for that urge that I mentioned earlier, until you can get some real inspiration, but I find myself mindless doodling a lot, and this doodling mindlessly actually works well with number 5, which is listening to a podcast, which is not something a lot of people would expect. Now, if you're focusing hard on a good drawing that's going to be special or for someone, distracting yourself might not be the best. But if you're mindless doodling, or if you need inspiration, listening to a podcast is great. Now, the reason I say a podcast specifically, and not a type of media, as in a TV show, a movie, or a podcast, is because when it comes to visual stuff like that you can distract yourself with, not only one, does it distract you, but two, I find me specifically being overloaded with inspiration when it comes to watching TV or movies or something, and also you might get caught up and forget you have that urge. But I say podcast because you can listen to a podcast while you're drawing, or while you're doing anything, really. And this is gonna sound strange, specifically a podcast. What? A podcast? But there are a lot of good ones out there that you can listen to. And when you think podcast, you might be thinking an informational, like, talk between two guys sitting at a table drinking coffee or something. But there are a lot of podcasts out there that are not like that at all, that are just completely, not that there's anything wrong with that, no, nothing, but just like something that you can get inspiration from, like a story. That's what I'm trying to think of. It's a story. And one that I highly, highly recommend is Welcome to Night Vale, which is kind of like a fake radio show for this fantasy science fiction town that people live in, but the weird is normal. And it's really cool. And I get a lot of inspiration from that, and it also kind of calms the urge while you can mindless doodle. And it's fun. It's fun. Listening to podcasts are fun. You can really invest yourself in whatever's going on. But yeah, those are just my 5 tips on how to get inspiration when you seem to be lacking it. This is the first time I've ever done a video like this, and it's really awkward. I've been constantly recording and deleting audio clips for probably about the last half an hour or so. 2 hours? 1 hour? I lost track of time. But if you guys want to see me do something like this again, tell me. And I also need more ideas, because it took forever for me to come up with something, like an idea to talk about that I wouldn't feel bad about talking about. Like, I would talk about, like, drawing tips and anatomy and stuff, but I just feel like I'm not experienced enough to talk about that kind of stuff. So if there's anything else you want to hear me talk about, tell me. Also, what do you get inspiration from? This is definitely not all the only ways to get inspiration. And like I said, everybody's different. How do you get inspiration? I'm curious, because, I don't know, maybe I'll get inspiration from it too. I just had the sudden realization that there are like 3 minutes left in this video, and I'm already done with what I'm talking about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this picture. Now would be a good time to leave if you do not want to hear me ramble on about my OCs. So if you're leaving, have a good day. So, you're still here. Great! This girl right here is my OC Carmen, and she is the main protagonist of my story that I want to become a book series someday called Endom. And this picture took like, I forget, I calculated it. It's probably about 4.25 hours to do. Which is a lot for me, at least. I don't usually spend a long time on digital art. But in this, she is on like a computer thing. The story is a science fiction story, but she ends up finding some information that could potentially shows that the leader of their society, Lady Reem, that she could be doing some illegal stuff, and you can tell by the expression on her face, she is concerned, or surprised, or whatever you want to call it. But this is actually part of the beginning of the story, because a little ways into the story, she runs away, in an attempt to find a way to stop Lady Reem. And this is what happens before, when she first discovers, oh my gosh, something's wrong. Which then leads her to run away and then meet all the rest of the characters and whatnot. But yeah, I could talk about my characters for hours. Please tell me if you want me to talk about my characters, which you probably don't. But if you do, tell me, or I might leave a poll. Because that would be something I'd very much enjoy, and something I'd actually feel comfortable talking about. If you couldn't tell by all my ums and buts and just actual stuttering, I'm an amateur, and I'm not used to aimlessly talking to myself into a microphone yet. Especially since this was practically unscripted. But I'll get better. I'm a beginner, I admit it. But yeah, tell me what you guys want to see, because I honestly don't know. I actually prefer doing traditional art over digital art, so I might film myself doing some of that, or doing some speed draws, question mark. But yeah, if I do, then I guess I'll see you later. And I'm almost done with this drawing. I'm just changing the line art and stuff, as you can see. Final touches. I love messing with lighting. Color and lighting is the funnest thing to mess with, even though I suck at color combinations. Anyways, I'll see you soon. Have a great day, everyone.